Argus Media, this is Driving Discussions, a podcast series focusing on the forces that affect road fuels globally. Greetings and salutations once again. I'm Jason Metko, spot ticker reporter here at Argus. On this edition of the presentation, we're diving into the latest with Atlantic Coast distillate fuels, how things have played out the first month of this new year, and where things are heading through the rest of the winter. Our guest today is Argus Senior USAC distillate reporter Craig Ross. Welcome back, Mr. Ross. Good to have you join us yet again. I want to first dive into the impact on NYMEX futures and the overall price for diesel that we've been seeing since the start of the year. But before that, can you give us a little bit of the lay of the land and how things are assessed in the market?
Hey, good morning, buddy. I appreciate you having me on again. Always a pleasure to talk road fuels with you. Let's briefly just touch on some of the basic trade structure, just for those of our listeners who are maybe not familiar with how each regional market trades. Each location, for example, New York, as we're talking about today, they trade in a differential, that is a relationship against the corresponding futures contract. So if we take a barrel on the Atlantic coast, again, focusing on the New York harbor, let's say barge ultra low sulfur diesel, if that's trading at minus 1 cent a gallon, minus a penny for a prompt cycle, that's referring to the differential relationship against the corresponding diesel futures contract. So if NYMEX futures are trading at $3.15 a gallon, this New York harbor barge diesel trading at negative a penny is going to have a cash price of $3.14 a gallon. And the reason I wanted to highlight this is that the main driving force behind prices, whether they're in the domestic US or in these regional markets, the main driving force behind that determines the price is the NYMEX futures contract. The differential is very valuable. It tells us what the demand and supply sentiment is for each region or market. So, for example, if differentials are trading lower throughout the day or throughout the week, that's an indication that reduced demand is being experienced in that specific region. Looking at the first 30 days in January, New York harbor barge diesel cash prices were averaging $3.27 a gallon, and that's a 15-cent increase from the December averages of $3.12. New York harbor differentials over that same period were averaging around 3.5 cents during the first 30 days of this year. That's only an increase of around 4 cents compared to December. So the overall price structure is there's a far greater influence on the NYMEX futures than in differentials. Typically, we see demand for diesel and gas oil increase over the colder winter months. And while diesel futures are still elevated by quite significantly compared to year-ago levels, the sharp backwardation that we saw last year, meaning the prompt prices were far higher than any of the forward months, in some cases 30 or 40 cents higher between month 1 and 2. That backwardation has shrunk to a more normal spread where it's around between 5 or 6 cents over the last few days.
This is Driving Discussions. We're with Craig Ross, our Senior USAC distillate reporter. Craig, I want to talk about what took place about a month or two ago, supply crunches in the region, especially of diesel. Can you tell us what led to that and how we're shaping up now?
Obviously, the Russia-Ukraine conflict was on the forefront of everyone's mind last year. And as a result of various supply constraints with the lower exports coming out of Russia, the lower supplies being moved through Western Europe, either to the water or through the pipeline, was a result of that. And Europe, in an attempt to try and shore up its reserves prior to the beginning of the winter season, was absorbing far more of the global market share that the US usually had access to. Now, while temperatures have fallen in recent weeks, overall, we are experiencing a far milder than expected winter weather here in the US, and Europe is experiencing record warm temperatures throughout the region, everywhere from Paris to Prague. And that has actually provided a buffer for European supplies against the lower piped supply due to the Russian export restrictions. In addition to that, the tanker clean freight rates, the cost to ship barrels from Europe to the US Atlantic coast, Over the last couple of weeks, they've reached the lowest level since March of last year. And it's made it far more affordable to ship barrels of diesel and gas oil to the Atlantic coast. And while prices in the US here are still quite high, it's actually incentivized a lot of these exporters. And the most recent report from the Energy Information Administration showed that distillate fuel oil imports into PADD 1, the US Atlantic coast, hit 312,000 barrels per day last week. That's more than double the same week in 2022.
Couple more moments here on Driving Discussions with Craig Ross, our USAC distillate reporter. Craig, winter is almost done, depending on whether or not Puxatawny Phil sees his shadow here the 1st of February. But I wanted to get your sense of where things are going as we wind down winter 2023.
Speaking to traders on the East Coast, the guys are in two minds, where it seems 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. There are some traders that are cautiously optimistic that imports into the US Atlantic coast will remain strong enough to hold supplies above the demand threshold here in the US. However, there are guys that are reminding me we just need to be mindful of the fact that supply averages for the first 3 weeks this year are in some cases below half of what the more seasonal norms that we saw in going back 2 years, by 2021 at the end of COVID. Now, we have seen import fixtures increase dramatically over the last few weeks. We're seeing a lot more vessels that are being sourced from the Middle East that are inbound to New York Harbor, as well as cargoes that are either originating or being diverted from Europe to the Atlantic coast. And again, with freight rates consecutively tracking lower, especially since early December, where the clean freight rates were at the highest level in over 2 years. They have moved steadily and consecutively lower since then. Unfortunately, it does look like prices are going to remain high, again, owing to the strength on the NYMEX futures contract. And even if winter temperatures don't have the usual impact due to warmer weather, we're only a few months away from the agricultural demand that we see for diesel prices as we go into the agricultural spring season.
Craig Ross, a wealth of information, our senior USAC distillate reporter. Craig, thank you for the time as always, my friend, and let's touch base in the spring, okay?
Always a pleasure to talk with you, my man. Thank you very much.
Craig Ross, our senior USAC distillate reporter here at Argus. And with that, we conclude yet another edition of Driving Discussions, a production of Argus Media. This reminder to check out the previous episodes in our series, and for more information on Argus's global refined products coverage, make sure to visit argusmedia.com/oil-products.